Hello and welcome. You are watching The Chase right here on ZTN Prime. My name is Faith Nyawade. Thank you so much for making the time and for joining us this evening. Now, in Zimbabwe, abortion is technically illegal, yet nearly 70,000 of women undergo the procedure every year, mostly in dangerous backyard conditions. With unsafe abortions contributing roughly 25% of maternal deaths nationwide, we are right now at a breaking point. With 25% of maternal deaths linked to unsafe abortion, the Medical Services Amendment Bill was supposed to be the cure. Instead, it has sparked some sort of holy war within the Senate. Is Clause 11 a lifeline for our daughters or a death sentence for our values? Tonight we are asking, can our laws bridge the gap between cultural tradition and a medical emergency? Our discussion, abortion law reform, public health versus morality. And in the studio tonight, I'm joined by Honorable Perseverance Shaw, Member of Parliament, Dr. David Broom, a pastor Renewal Fellowship Church, Tadwana Shimagaya, legal officer with Women and Law in Southern Africa, as well as Brian Manganye, who is a legal expert. Gentlemen and ladies, welcome to The Chase.
Thank you.
Now, please do note that all views that are expressed on The Chase are those of our guests and do not reflect the views of St. Papers 1980 or those of ZT and Prime. Let's cut straight to the chase. Now, would like to first understand what the current law or what the Medical Services Amendment Bill speaks about. What is it encompassing? Before then, we narrow it down to the point of contention, which is Clause 11. Honorable, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we worked on that bill in the parliament and we really thought we had done a good job because that law was enacted in 1977 and a lot has happened. Changes have happened. Changes in culture, changes in everything. Even if you look at us, the way we're dressing in the 1940s, in the 1960s, up to now has changed. So somehow, some things had to be changed. So when we looked at it, if you look at it, there are a few new things. Most of the things were there. The law clearly states as to when an abortion can be carried out. Abortion, there is induced abortion and sometimes there are natural abortions. So we are talking here of induced abortion. And like it or not, this is the background I'm telling you. Like it or not, abortions are happening. Accepting it or not, abortions are happening. And they are not just happening and just to go. People are dying. The women are dying because it's done in a Nicodemus way. In darkness. And those who perform it, most of them are people who cannot do it well. So what did we want to achieve? We wanted to modernize it. We wanted to include, the president is saying the mantra, don't leave anyone behind. So we looked at those people who need that. And then we noticed that there were certain gaps which were there. We are not changing the laws. The laws did not change. But it's like, if the current law, which is there, accepts that abortion can be done to a woman who is at risk with pregnancy, then we look at a situation and say this 14-year-old has been impregnated. She is a child. She is not an adult. An adult here in Zimbabwe is 18 years old. Now if she is 14 years old and she has a pregnancy, that is an embryo in her uterus. And the father of that uterus, of that little fetus, is gone somewhere. Maybe it could be rape or what. But what we are looking at now is the girl. How can we help her? We now go to the law and say, which law now do we use for her? Can her body carry this pregnancy? Is it okay that a child has a child, carries a child? Mm-hmm. This is all we are talking about. Let's look at the laws closely, deepen ourselves into them, then assist these girls or these women.
Now, Tadwana, from how you understand it or from where you're sitting, how exactly do you see this law, the previous one and the one that has been tabled now before Parliament?
Thank you very much. Just to mention that the current existing law, which is the Termination of Pregnancy Act, was enacted in 1977. And that was not for Zimbabweans, that was for Rhodesians, because Zimbabwe only became Zimbabwe after 1980. And the current Termination of Pregnancy Act is not aligned with the Constitution of Zimbabwe and does not give regard to some of the provisions which are in the Constitution. So indeed, what the Medical Services Amendment Bill, particularly Clause 11, intends to do is to align the existing law, Termination of Pregnancy Act, with our Constitution. We all know that quite recently, that's when the age for consenting to sex was changed, January 2024, the 18 years. That does not exist in the 1977 laws. So what it just aims to do is to align, and it also giving regard to issues like mental health, because the existing act, it only regards the physical health of the mother if it's in danger. But what the Medical Service Amendment Bill intends to do is to include the mental health aspect of it, as defined by the World Health Organization. It considers mental health as well.
Mm-hmm. Brian, you are also another legal expert. Now, I am starting with the basis of the law now before I go to David, because he is coming from a church perspective, which makes him just another individual who really does not have, legal knowledge. So let's lay the basis of the legal works first. Brian, your take.
From what the Honorable said and my learned colleague has said, the two acts, which is the one which was enacted in 1977 and one which was enacted in 1979, those two acts were not aligned to the constitution that we have, which is the question which we had in 2013. Now, the clause 11 is just a small spot in the bucket of milk. The whole medical act or the medical bill that we're talking about is addressing section 76, which says everyone has a right to public health and emergency services. So this medical bill is addressing all those issues, and also the Bill of Rights in terms of reproductive rights of women, and also the health sector. If you look on the health sector of Zimbabwe currently, there was no consensus between the private sector and the public health. So they were supposed to be a redress in terms of those issues. So if you focus on clause 11, we are missing the point. The point is looking on how everyone is supposed to access this public health and emergency services. Because if you look now, vulnerable people with chronic disease, if they don't have money, they will not be able to access this medical rights because they don't have money. So this bill is addressing those issues. We don't focus on money first, but we focus on health. That is under their ethics of doctors and people in medical field. But now they were focusing on money more than they were focusing on their ethics. So this bill is addressing those issues and redressing the issues. The issue, we are not supposed only to focus on this clause. So I thought I should uncover the blanket of confusion.
No, you have uncovered the blanket of confusion, but then I would like for you to explain that blanket of confusion, to say, why then is everyone putting their focus on clause 11? What do you think is now, why is it become the main focal point and people are not talking about the merits of the bill, like you said?
I would be more selfish in this one to say religious people, they are only focusing on their right, which is on the Constitution, forgetting that other people have also rights in the Constitution. For example, women have their rights in the Constitution, and also everyone has their right in the Constitution. If you go on the Bill of Rights, we are focusing on section 76 of the Bill of Rights. So we can't say, because you belong to an association or religion, you can't have your health rights. So in other ways, it's unfair.
So you're saying the faith denomination is the one that keeps focusing on this clause?
Yes.
Well, it's a good thing then that
they are talking about more morality and forgetting that everyone has rights.
It's a good thing that David is joining us. He can answer to that. David, we're talking of morals. We're talking of the Constitution before this provision and what is being provided for, or the amendments that seeks to be made. Tell us from a faith perspective, how are you viewing this?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And to first of all say, again, I think the bill, the amendment that we're looking at has 10 clauses that I think the vast majority of Zimbabweans are going to agree on, which is why the point of contention has happened around this 11th clause, because that's where I think a vast majority of people don't agree. And I think the vast majority of our population would disagree. The comments earlier in regard to the law that is old, that makes provision in our Constitution, and whilst I understand the argument that it came from Zimbabwe era and that kind of thing, the reality is that human life hasn't changed. We are still humans. Babies still come about the same way as they did 40 years ago, 100 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And so that the biology of what we're talking about has not changed at all. And so the debate that we're talking about has been around since the introduction of this idea of a voluntary termination of pregnancy, and I think within the aligning with the UN charters and things like that, what we have to understand is that the voices that's not being mentioned is the voice of the unborn. And scripturally, Proverbs tells us that we have to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. And so within all of these legal charters and arguments, what we do find is that in the original articles of our Constitution in 48, there is a right to life that is given and ascribed to every human being.
Now, Honorable, I just want to come in right there when you mentioned the right to life. Honorable, we're talking about how we're mentioning Clause 11 should allow people to be able to make that choice, whether it's a medical emergency or whatever it is, so that they're able to survive, they're able to live after the fact. But then there's another clause which says everyone has the right to life. How are you balancing the two now?
Exactly. The law we are proposing doesn't run away from it. It's the same. Point is, the one who is carrying the embryo has a right to life. And that embryo has a right to life. But what are the risks? We have a life already, which is existing. So sometimes if we don't do the right thing, sometimes these two will lose both lives. So that's why I'm saying the law already is there. What needs to be there is to really focus on it. What is the problem here? You see? Can we do it early or what? Let me give myself as an example. Let's look at me. Then I get pregnant. Okay? I have got BP. I've got sugar. Then I get pregnant. I'm giving an example like that. I am limping. Then I go and say, I got pregnant. And I don't think I can carry this pregnancy. It's not a demand and supply. I demand abortion. They don't supply it there. I have a right to ask for it, right? But the law is there. Now this is the law, the process there. Scrutinizing it and doing everything. The demand is there. Then somewhere there they say, no, Honorable, you can carry, we'll check on her. Then maybe around 7 months, we'll manage the BP, we'll manage the sugar. Then if the embryo is big enough, or is around 7 months or what, we can do C-section and take out the kid, because maybe she would have too much BP. That's another area. But sometimes the doctors can say, no, she can't even carry it's okay, let's remove. So I said, it's not demand and supply. It's demand. The supply is there, it can be given, it can be rejected. But it should be there so that this person exercises her right as well.
Now, Pastor, Zimbabwe's current legal framework actually allows or permits abortion under only limited circumstances: rape, incest, severe fetal impairment, or danger to the mother's life, and even requires a court-mediated process. Now, from a moral theology standpoint, you're saying everyone has the right to life, but does the church support this clause, or does it support what the current legal framework says?
I believe the majority of people will support the current legal framework. And the problem with what's trying to be introduced into the framework at this point is the very loose terminology that is surrounding trying to take away some of those things. For instance, in the original law that does provide for that, if there's a health risk to the mother, there is a provision that allows for a doctor to make a medical decision that says, based on training and all of that, that says, yes, this is a risk to the mother. But it does require 2 legal practitioners to support that decision. Whereas in this bill, there would not be any accountability. One individual doctor, which obviously opens up the opportunity for corruption and other things, that were other reasons why a doctor would make a decision, as opposed to being held accountable to the legal standards by which they've been trained. And so I think there are safeguards in the current law that we have that we would agree with. Absolutely.
Tadana, tell me about what you're thinking is we're talking about the right to life, and we're talking about termination when need be, or rather what the current framework is not proposing. What is your take on that?
My take on that is we are looking at the right to life in isolation to other rights that already exist. Right to dignity, the self-autonomy that is also granted by the constitutional provisions. The Bill of Rights in general, when we look at the right to life in isolation to a 14-year-old girl who has fallen pregnant, who is at risk and whose health is at risk, then really we are not being objective in the right to whose life. So it's whose life that we're trying to protect. So that's also what I see, that the Medical Service Amendment Bill comes to answer to that, to say whose life are we protecting when we choose to focus on the right to the fetus's life and we ignore the 14-year-old, the 9-year-old who's fallen pregnant, who clearly has no capacity to carry that pregnancy. Then we are not being very objective into whose life we want to protect.
David, which right are we protecting?
I think it's possible to protect both. I think to place it on this standpoint that they're mutually exclusive is not accurate, and I think that's why the original law made for an argument where if there is a risk to life for one of these individuals, then medical doctors are able to make that decision. And I don't think new law helps to adds anything to that. That right that's already there. It's sufficient in what it was originally stated as.
Brian, your take on that?
I think the argument is going back again into looking on the Bill of Rights. And also I would narrow, is a fetus a child or a fetus?
Is a fetus a child or a fetus, ladies and gentlemen?
Let's start from there. If we agree it's a child, then we will say it's a child.
It's not a child, it's a live embryo.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
Pastor?
Yeah, it's a live embryo.
That would be equivalent to me to saying that a toddler is not a human. Fetus, embryo, fetus, baby, toddler, adolescent,
They're the same
teenagers.
thing.
They are all terms that relate to the same species, the same live individual, regardless of where they are in space.
Tadana, what is your take? Is a fetus a baby? Is it the same right to life?
I think if we look at the current law, it even has a gestation period that it looks at. So I don't think in 2 weeks or in 1 month we're already talking about a child.
So if you can just explain that or clarify to say the current provisions are to say if it's the gestation period, we're not considering a fetus a child.
The current, the amendment bill looks at gestation period for children at 12 weeks and then for adults at 20 weeks. And also the way in which this is termed and the way this is penned, you can tell that it's also a public health issue. Morality is sincerely neither here nor there. We have taken the debate, we have taken this issue from the maternal ward and we have put it into the church, or we have now put the issues of morality where it is a health issue.
Brian, you can continue with what
so
you were
if we
saying.
agree that it is a fetus and then it's not a child, I would want to suggest that we are not breaking anyone's rights here, but we are abusing the reproductive rights of women all along in the Bill of Rights, because women were neglected. If you look on the UNDP report of 2020, where Mashuna East women, children who were below 18 years, fell pregnant, who is supposed to protect them? If you look on the termination of the Termination Act, which allows for those children to look on 2 lawyers and a medical doctor, are they able to afford 2 medical? Are they able to afford those legal services and a medical doctor? So the act already, it was making these vulnerable people excluded from the medical. So this medical bill is now looking on the vulnerable people, including them, hearing their rights. It's only that we are now focusing or upholding the moral rights and also the right to association religion is one of the factors that is hindering all the other rights on the Bill of Rights, especially Section 76.
David, is the church also looking at the Constitution? Is it only focusing on morality, or is it also looking at the health aspect of it all? Are you being balanced in your arguments?
So I'm a medical practitioner as well, and so I believe we're looking at the entirety of that. The arguments are always made as to when does a fetus become human? How does that? How do we determine that? And the reality is that arguments about survival out of the womb and things like that all negate the reality that everything begins with what we see begins differently to how it originates. So a plant, a tree, a fruit, everything starts as something that looks very different than the final product. And we couldn't just say that that's not a tree because it's in seed form. And so it negates the whole process of life when we try and eliminate we separate our conscience from the reality of when life begins. And it's a convenient argument, but it's not a scientifically valid one. Biologically, the biologists, doctors will disagree on when life begins. Biologists, to a 95 percentile, agree that life begins at conception. It is the point that the egg and the sperm come together, a new zygote is formed. It is at that point that it is unique, has unique DNA, separate from the mother and the father. It's a separate entity from both. It's not just a continuation of the mother's body. It's not just a clump of cells that is a part of the mom's body that we can eliminate. It's a distinctly, by DNA, it's a distinctly separate entity to the mother. And that will grow and change over time, as we all do. And it would be sad that if we decided at some point in time that because we didn't like the way we look later on in life, that we should be able to terminate life because we look different. And it's the same for a fetus.
So now, Honorable, one of the arguments that are coming up with this clause, I know Brian says we shouldn't focus on it too much because it's just a drop in the ocean, but one of the arguments within or surrounding that clause is that it is going to allow everyone to have access to abortion. Can you clarify that for everyone, to just say, is that what it seeks to do, or does it seek to do something else entirely different?
I don't see it like that. The doctor has rightly said something. He said the other pieces in the proposal, the bill, are loose. Maybe somewhere we need to tighten here and there. And as I said before, abortion should not be a demand and supply thing. We can't have a nation like that. Most of us are Christians, and we don't actually want to kill. If somebody kills, becomes a criminal. But when we look at human beings and we talk about abortion, before you really go into that proposal, look at the statistics. Even with the law, why do we have 70,000 to 80,000 abortions in Zimbabwe?
Now, I just want you, Honorable, to just hang that question a bit as we take a quick break. The Chase will be back shortly. Stay with us.
Catch exclusive interviews every weekday for candid, exciting, and thought-provoking conversations with your host, Erika Ndoro.
We talk about arts, we can talk about sports, we can even talk about politics, and sometimes we venture into a nice guitaristic play.
The one story where you can't get out of your head. Wakatarisa munhu so Erika, like where you're sitting. Ndozongokona bata face so pasina munhu.
Wakasiya music yako iyo afro chakuti ndo music manje yemuZimbabwe.
And I'm sure they're still saying the same thing now.
Yeah, so
Shona kana kuti Chindevere kana mumwe mutauri muno muZimbabwe ndiwe iwewe ndiwo rupawo rwako ndicho chidadiso chako.
Catch me, Erika Ndoro, right here on ZTN Prime every single Monday at 7 p.m. whilst we get exclusive.
didn't graduate. I guess I blew it.
You couldn't advise him anything. He would just look at you and say, so who do you think you are?
We were just like really spoiled.
And then they just give me the receipt and I'd pay.
That guy walks in one day and then he says that he wants to make a movie.
He was blowing the money.
There was just like this habit that he had where as soon as he got money, it was gone.
I just didn't have the skills or the experience.
This money, I could see it disappear so fast.
Welcome back. You are still watching The Chase. Good evening if you're just joining us. Now, tonight in studio, I am joined by Honorable Perseverance Joe, Member of Parliament. We also have Dr. David Broom, a pastor in Renewal Fellowship Church. Taliana Jumagai, who is a legal officer from Women in Law in Southern Africa, and Brian Mangani, a legal expert. Tonight we are discussing the abortion law reform, public health versus morality. Now, before the break, the Honorable was just explaining to us where some of the loose screws that need to be tied up are. Now, Honorable, if you could just take us from where you said off, 70,000 or more abortions a year.
Yeah. Let me look at them and actually say them correctly. Research has found that the 66 to 80,000 abortions in Zimbabwe. That is a high number, right? And secondly, 16% of those become maternal deaths. The mothers die. We have lost lives. 16% of 80,000. What is that? Is a number. Then studies have also shown that every day is 219 abortions. From who? And people have noticed that adolescents are involved in them. 185 deaths, 185 abortions actually come from adolescents. Those, now they are our girls now. What do we do now with our girls? It means if we don't help them, maybe through family planning, maybe through actually telling them not to indulge. Can you tell that person not to indulge? I told you, times have changed. Maybe it's the TV, maybe it's the whatever, or the time, just the time. These girls, when we grew up, we could mix with boys, but we never had sex with boys. We would mix with them, we would play. Sometimes at home, we would sleep, boys there, girls there, and nothing will happen. But in these days, even a relative, you are afraid to leave the kid. You are afraid to leave girls and boys together. Even if they are brothers and sisters, you have to be very careful. When they are relatives, then you really have to rush home.
Now, while you are on that, I also want to now bring it back to David to say, does the church also recognize that cultural norms have changed? What used to be normal is not so normal anymore. When you are looking at this bill, at this amendment to say we do not have to really change it, are you also looking at the fact that things have changed, times have changed, it's a different era?
Definitely. And I think, back to the point, shocking statistics that we've had that many deaths. The reality is, if we look at South Africa as a case in point, who have liberalized their abortion laws tremendously since the 90s, I believe 96 or somewhere around there, maternal death rates, maternal mortality has tripled in the last 30 years in South Africa since they opened up their abortions to make it more accessible to the medical community. So the idea that it's more dangerous for us not to have these liberal laws that allow for abortion on demand is actually a fallacy and factually incorrect, because statistically we know that when we open this up, the mortality rate of moms goes up exponentially. And so in regard to has society changed? Yes, absolutely it has. And quick anecdotal story. My parents were involved in teaching about parenting for all of their ministry lives. And at one point they were ministering in a church. I have 3 older sisters. I'm the youngest of 4 children. When they were done sharing about parenting, a person came up to my mom and said, "Man, I feel sorry for you. I'm so glad all I have is boys. I don't have to worry about my girls." And my mom looked at this woman and she said, "If you raised your boys right, I'd not have to worry about my girls."
Yes.
And that's the reality. So this often gets framed as a women's rights issue. And I believe the church has as big a responsibility as anybody to say, no, this is a men issue. If men were behaving the way they should, we actually wouldn't be talking about this right now. Yes.
What makes me happy about this panel is we have 2 legal experts, a male and a female, who can balance out this issue to say, is it really a women's issue or men should also be heavily involved in this? Talia?
I think because of the fact that we're talking about termination of pregnancy, the only one who's capable of carrying a pregnancy is a woman. So I think this is fundamentally a women issue. Yes, we can talk about putting measures to, I don't know, say what to men. We have been trying to say the same conversation since HIV and AIDS became a thing. We used to have an AIDS pandemic, an HIV pandemic, which was life-threatening, and we were having broken homes, people were dying before ARVs became accessible to people. If we could not moderate or contain that when it was an AIDS issue, I don't know if we can now say that we can come up with ways or things that we can now contain it when it's a termination of pregnancy issue. So rather, we cannot really control society or man tendencies or cravings, but I think what we can do is protect the woman who is now in this situation. So to be realistic and not idealistic about it is what I think will help.
Brian, a women's issue or a couple issue?
It's a women issue because we are talking about reproductive rights of women. So I think they were neglected by having a moral compass, saying that we are supposed to dictate what a woman is supposed to do on their body. Because if you look on these things, it's sort of a patriarchal norm of saying we need to dictate. That the church and the society is dictating on the reproductive rights of women. So in another way, we are it's not abortion on demand. It's just we are the medical bill is introducing all the different bill of rights which are there. But only people are focusing on putting a moral compass when you talk about the body of a woman. So I think it becomes sort of.
So David,
there is supposed to be a paradigm shift in that.
So David, does the church have something against women's rights or the right to express themselves? Is the church still just trying to protect the patriarchy? If you could just explain and clarify, since you are here.
No, I don't think that's the issue, that we're trying to take away any rights from women. In fact, I feel like where probably we have failed is holding men responsible for their part and what they need to be able to do, and taking care of a child that is developed. Unfortunately, particularly in Zimbabwe, I think the legal frameworks are very impotent. The ones that are there, the enforcement of them is very poor. And I think if we held men more responsible, then we would see some morality change. Will we eliminate it completely? No, I don't think we will. But my mom always used to say to me, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I'm not sure that murdering an unborn child is the answer for one sin to solve it with a murder.
Now, Talia, is abortion murder?
Abortion is not murder, because the term murder legally, what it means killing someone with an intention to kill them. And in these circumstances, what we're discussing, termination of pregnancy access, is for women who have been raped. We are talking about children who are under the age of 18. We're talking about women who have no capacity to carry a pregnancy for health reasons, physical health or mental health. So to really put it as murdering a child, that's the miscarriage of justice.
Brian, Honorable, I'm coming to you to talk about how Senate just hit the brakes on this bill, but I just want Brian to also weigh in on this. Is abortion murder?
It's not. It's not even murder. I think that if we go on in putting the moral compass and saying women, that's why I was saying, when it comes to women, we are now dictating on their body to say, if you do this, you are now. So we are threatening them. giving them that religious myth and fallacy to say if you do this, you are going to face this. So I think everyone has those rights. So I think if you look on that Bill of Rights, the rights of women and the right to health, those are the rights which were the acts that we are talking about, the 1977, the 1971, they are not aligning with the Constitution of Zimbabwe of 2030. And we say as legal experts, any law that is not aligned with the Constitution, it's invalid.
Honorable Parliament just passed this, but Senate has hit the brakes on it. Some proponents of the bill are asking what is causing these delays. Their argument are every delay is costing almost another 200 women walking into these backyard clinics that we're trying to say no to. What is your take?
They making law in Parliament. There is a procedure. It's a process. I think when we left, was it when we passed it in the House of Assembly, was it 23 October 2025? Yes. Then after that, it has to go to the Senate. Then after that, it goes to the President. So I don't know exactly what the problem is, but we have the Minister of Justice. He is in charge of all that. So whatever is going on, I don't think maybe he will take it to cabinet as well, because so they and even the what people are saying, maybe they are also looking at it and making sure. But very soon it's going to Senate, and this is the senators. They might be different. They might have a different view from the members of Parliament in the National Assembly. But in the National Assembly, we moved around, and when we came back, we debated it, and we really thought we'd done a very good job. But I tell you, you can't always make 10 out of 10. And when we did it, when we actually put in the input we put, it was not like liking to kill. No. We still we respect the human being. That is our culture, we don't care. But we then looked at how it was actually, the law, how it was actually made before. It hasn't changed. Nothing is actually changing. The new thing is, I think there are 2 or 3. I noticed for the prisoners and other people who are arrested, whatever, or those people arrested, that is the new thing in. Everything else is just a few additions, amending here and there. So I don't know why people are rushing to say, it's wrong. But I promise you, take it from me, all the members of Parliament, it's not that they want to kill. It was just looking at SRHR, the needs of the people. That Bill of Rights. And generally, you protect the life of the one who had that life.
Now, Tadanaje, earlier we did talk about how you needed to have 2 legal experts for you to able to get an abortion process, whether it was for medical reasons and whatnot. If you could just explain to us what this new amendment or proposal says in regards to that aspect. Do you still need to go to 2, 3, 4 doctors to get signed off to say, okay, now Faith, you can go and get a termination, or how does it work now? How is this proposed to work rather?
Thank you. It's proposed to work in such a way that it's a public health issue. So the same manner that someone goes to a medical practitioner and consult for a headache without needing a lawyer to testify that they have indeed a headache. That's in the same way that this is going to work out with a medical practitioner. With consent to children, there is also an instance under the new Medical Service Amendment Bill where it says with the opinion of another medical practitioner to make them 2 medical practitioners. But right now it's been reduced to a public health issue, which it has always been from day one. And also, just to comment quickly on that, this is also just protecting not only the girl in Harare, but also the girl in Lotito or the girl in other places where they have no access to a lawyer. The current law as it stands, there was an issue of a magistrate court certificate as well. One had to go to court, and there are so many cases we could mention, Mildred Mapingo versus Minister of Home Affairs and others, where she actually had to carry a full-term pregnancy. Now that child is 20 years old, and that was a result of rape. And because the administrative and bureaucratic process which is involved for the ones who are allowed under the law to access termination of pregnancy, the administrative process was just so hectic that even the ones who should be benefiting, like the victims of rape, could not get the help that they were supposed to get.
David, which part of Clause 11 does the faith denomination have a problem with?
Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's the looseness of the terminology. Let me take one for instance. It's said that a woman can access this and get an abortion based on mental health. What is mental health? It's not a disease. We haven't defined the term as a mental illness, a mother that is incapable for some diagnosable reason that we could put down, use an ICD-10 code and say this is the condition they have. Mental health leaves it wide open. We have 6 children. I will tell you that at the introduction of every one of the 6 children to the family, there was stress. There always is. And so that could be classified as mental health. They're all happy.
How does the faith denomination, or how do you define mental health then?
Well, there's got to be mental health is a very broad term. It doesn't even state whether that's a positive or a negative. Mental health could be good. My physical health could be good. And so it just leaves the ambiguity of the terminology, leaves it wide open for a medical practitioner to be able to determine on their own that this, because of depression, because of stress, because of whatever, that this is acceptable in this case. What we're saying is this needs to go back and get some much stricter terms put on it, because there may be cases in which a mother is incapable of caring for a child. That would be a whole different debate, but right now that's not even the question. And it's the same thing as has been mentioned before, that this bill is designed for the 14-year-old, the 9-year-old. It's not. Our old law was designed for those cases. This current bill basically gives full access up to 12 weeks for anybody who requests an abortion, 20 weeks for an adult who is requesting it, without any need to verify why that's happening. And so for us, that it's just too loose. Why don't we require that there's some sort of standard placed on that and medical diagnosis applied to the reasons for which this could take place?
Tell you, I saw you disagreeing. I saw you shaking your head. Was it in agreement or was it in disagreement?
It was in disagreement. Like has been mentioned earlier, this is not abortion on demand. The 12 weeks period is for children who are under the age of 18, and the only reason why it's 12 weeks is because at that process and at that stage the process is less invasive, and so they can access. And these children are the same ones who are under these categories of people who have been sexually abused and who are raped, because no person under the age of 18 can consent to have sex in Zimbabwe because they are regarded to as a child. So what we are now doing is that we are saying under the age of 18 you are old enough to be a mom, but not old enough to make a decision if you should carry a pregnancy or not, but you're also not old enough to engage into sexual activities. But you know what, you are old enough to be a mom. That is absurd.
Honorable, what is your take on this? To say, David is saying one thing, Tadio is saying the other, you as the honorable member, what is your take in regards to this?
Very tricky. But you know what? The children, they are our future. And things which are happening to them are not good. What we experienced when we were growing up is not what they are experiencing. But we are still there. We are their parents, we are their guardians. And we have to assist them. I said it before, they are indulging. They are doing sex, like it or not. Let's go to COVID days. When we came out from COVID, a number of children, many girls, not many boys, many girls could not go to school because they were pregnant. And thanks to the government of Zimbabwe, we now enacted a law which said, okay, you can give birth and then go back to school. That is a positive. But we now look at it. How old were these children? There was that child, I have forgotten the name, from another religious sect. And eventually she died. A funny death, we did not actually know what happened. And a lot of deaths like that from those sectors, religious sectors, they're happening.
Now we are trying to start to wind down the show now. Access to contraception, sexual education is a very controversial subject in Zimbabwe, especially within the faith denomination. And yet again, it's the same faith denomination that's saying you should stop termination of pregnancies when they are also not advocating for the discussions of sexual education in those churches. David, how is the church navigating that? We are not disputing that things do happen, but are you doing enough to make sure that it does not happen in the first place? And if it does happen, are you teaching the children within the church denomination to be safe enough to not get to a point where possibly termination is needed, or they feel the need to terminate legally or backyard as it is right now?
Yeah, I think there could always be more being done on that. I think the tightrope that we walk as a society is where do we place the onus on sex education? Is it the school's responsibility? Is it the church's responsibility? Is it the government's responsibility? Or is it the family's responsibility? Should it be done at home? I'm of the belief that it should happen at home. Where it doesn't happen at home, we should have a fail-safe mechanism that starts with our churches and from there possibly schools. I think where we're seeing a tension is when sex education is trying to be introduced to second graders, third graders. That's not actually sex education. It's a sexualization. It's trying to awaken something long before its time. And I think that's where we have to be very, very careful in the education process of who introduces this, in what framework that's done. And yes, I think if there needs to be more intentional from all those aspects.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to ask you, Brian, to say, what is your take on distributing protection or family planning pills to children under the age of 18?
I know David is going to ham on me on this, but I'll still go on to say we are not only focusing on religion, which is one right. Let's focus on the Bill of Rights. This bill in its entirety is looking on different rights in terms of the Bill of Rights. So let's encompass that education to children. Let's encompass this bill in entirety, not only focus on religion and saying what religion detects as wrong and what is wrong and right. Because as lawyers, Taliwa would agree that we would always have the debate of morality versus law. So if you only focus on morality to say that only our laws are going to suit this religion, then by the end of the day we are going to focus, our country is going to be like focused on one sector as a country. Mm-hmm. Yet we have different beliefs in our country. So let's have this liberalization. Mm-hmm. That is what I think.
David, is the church finding the balance between morality and the constitution, the rights of people, the rights of individuals, women, children, everyone who is identified by the constitution?
It's cliche-ish, but I do believe that we can't legislate morality. Morality is an issue of the heart. But we have to have laws that protect our communities and our societies. The question is removing the consequence the right answer? I think pregnancy is being looked at and discussed as a consequence of something, of an action, and it is. And obviously morality would want to deal with the action first, and then we wouldn't necessarily have the consequence to debate about. Mm-hmm. I don't know if removing the consequence is the answer to our moral issue, or making it more stringent. I think morality is a hard issue.
Tadiwa, we are talking about morality, we're talking about church, we're talking about sexual education in schools to prevent the whole process of saying now perhaps this person needs termination before or while they are under the age limit. What is your take?
My take is that the law and religion or morality can coexist, but I do not think that they are the same thing, and I don't think that they can become one thing, because the law is the law. Whether moral or not, it's the law. Whether just or not, it is the law. Whether ethical or not, the law remains the law. What makes the law a law is that it is enforceable by the state. So yes, morality can say another thing, but the law can say another thing, because the law, what makes something a law is that it is enforceable by the state.
Honorable, now that the Senate is going to also talk about this bill and dictate what goes or what stays behind, we were talking about, or the panelists did mention a few loose screws that need to be adjusted, issues of terminology to redefine things. As you go now to Parliament, you still are talking about this bill. What are you going to see change, or what changes do you think you might have to make, or what clarity do you think you still need to provide in terms of the bill?
Okay. I think maybe what can be, like loose, he said it as loose terminology, okay? Tightening here and there, like he said, mental health. Yes, maybe they will have to expand on mental health. For example, mad women. If a person is mad, a mad person in the street, or a girl who lives in the street, they have to say something maybe. Those are the loose areas where they should clarify so that there is no ambiguity. Then I think they should add on to say like education, age-appropriate sexual education. Sometimes, even from ECD, we talk about sexual reproduction, but at their level, age-appropriate. You tell them this part should not be touched. Be careful. If anybody wants to touch this part, say no. You are not training them anything, but you are telling them to be careful. Just like if a stranger knocks at the door, don't open the door. If you see a stranger at the gate, don't open the gate, run away. So shout and tell them, somebody wants to touch me, where you said it should not be touched. And they've got songs for that. So age-appropriate education. So it should be added in. We are now trying to say, this did not work much. To say, don't do sex, you are a child. Don't indulge. What now? What steps now? How can we do? Can we make to make sure that these children understand what we are saying? They will indulge. Let me tell you something. I grew up having the pastors, children, they will be taught every day not to indulge. But when we went to secondary school, some of the people who indulged too much, they were the pastor's daughters. But the fathers and mothers had worked very hard. Right now here, I know other people. We are different here. We've got different groups of people in Zimbabwe. Okay? There are white people, there are black people, there are people who live from other nations. Certain people allow their children after Form 4 or Form 6 to have family planning quietly. Then these people start indulging.
So is it now a matter of, like what David was saying, let it happen at family level, let's not try to enforce it at educational level, at school level, at church, let it happen quietly, like you're saying, within the families.
Then what will be the job of the parliament? What will be the job of the government? The government is to govern all those. That law is for the people. And you have to do it, yes, at home. Everywhere it has to be done. But finally, the law is the law.
Now that we are concluding and we are calling this a night, I am just going to ask a very contentious question. No pun intended, but I just want to check in and see, are you for the bill or are you against it? Just a one answer so that we conclude and call it night. Brian?
In its entirety, the bill has some words which need to be modified. So at this stage, until we have the right words, I'm not yet for the bill.
David?
I would have voted for the first 10 sections and eliminated 11.
Eliminated entirely?
Right now, yes.
Tariwa?
I would definitely vote for the bill. Obviously with the necessary amendments that need to be made, but even as it is, if we can't have the amendments, I'd rather have the bill than have nothing.
Well, the Honourable is listening. I cannot ask you because then that is...
for the bill, but it has to be tightened here and there.
Yes,
but I am for the bill. Yes. And I really think we did a very good one. There are a lot of merits.
But then some people are saying clause 11 should be removed entirely.
What is it exactly?
All that, the loose screws and all that.
Yeah, the loose screws will be tightened.
They need to be tightened. And with that, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you so much for joining us and for joining in this discussion. You can continue it all over our social media handles, the Zimpever social media platforms. Please do feel free to do that. But for tonight, thank you so much for joining us. In studio tonight, I was joined by Honourable Perseverance Joe, a Member of Parliament, Dr. David Brube, pastor, Renewal Fellowship Church, Tadiana Jimagaya, a legal officer, women and law in Southern Africa, as well as Brian Manganye, a legal expert. I have been your host, Faith Nyaude. Good evening, and enjoy the rest of your viewing.